Freeport-McMoRan has at times been an absolutely terrible stock to own. They have engaged in some substantial value destruction along the way of trying to diversify and then refocus on what is their core business. But it might be time to buy. This is a company that's refocused on what they're best at, their core business, and spun out a bunch of that junk. I'm Jason Hall. This is The Smattering, and I've got Tyler Crow here with me to help us talk about why this might be the time to buy. Hey, Tyler.
How's it going, Jason?
I'm good. This is an interesting one that you brought to me. Before we get into the reason that's the case, we have a great partnership with The Motley Fool. If you're looking for more great stock ideas, go to our link, fool.com/The Smattering. Put in some information right there. Thanks. So, Tyler, I'm really compelled by this one because the Freeport-McMoRan that I remember over the past few years is the miner that decided it wanted to be an oil and gas producer too.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with miners to begin with. It's an incredibly tough business and one that requires an intense amount of focus and discipline over a very, very long period. And so it's very cyclical in that sense too. I mean, in general, mining has been an awful business for much of the 2010s. You know, going in the 2010s, we had the Chinese commodity boom, if anybody remembers, but that subsequently crashed for about 6 or 7 years. Everybody was trying to figure out how much, material we needed as a result of that coming out of it. But Freeport, during that time, decided, hey, we're really good at this. We can do oil and gas too. And that's just a recipe for disaster. Somebody got wise at that company and said, we're not an oil and gas company. We got rid of all of that. And we're going to focus on copper. We're going to focus on gold, and any of the associates that typically come with that. You get like molybdenum and things like that. But the reason that things are looking interesting right now, for one, the macro environment, let's just get that out of the way. Copper looks pretty strong over the next several years. You ask most investment banks, you look at, slide decks for most of the mining companies, copper is the huge focus. Because we've been talking
about the electrification of everything, the growth of the global middle class, the need to generate more energy around the world, whether it's electric vehicles or just running power lines, there's a massive amount of need to develop more copper resources.
And copper is kind of the bellwether of industrial activity of all the mining. It's the most sensitive for anything like that. So over the next 3 years, it's looking to be very promising. If you're saying electrification of everything on top of all of the other construction and infrastructure that we do associated with, the growth of society. So you have that. You have a relatively disciplined company. If you look at their capital spending right now, it's pretty modest. They've got some mine build outs that they want to do. They have a big smelting operation in Indonesia that is just about to complete. And so you have that going from a big capital outflow to generating cash and, on top of what they're doing right now, which is a nice boost to what in the near term. And this is where it gets really interesting, is they have developed what's called a new leaching technology. Leaching is basically the process of you're taking your ore that you dig out of the ground, you run it through a leaching process, and that's what strips it out and makes the metallics that we use, right? Typically, there is metallics left behind in what's called the slag, the leftovers from your mine. Well, they've developed a new leaching process, and they believe that with this new leaching process that they have an additional 38 billion pounds of resource in copper in the United States just sitting in their slag piles, more or less. Now, this is a company that makes 4.2 billion pounds annually. So we're looking at almost 9 years of production based solely on this low capital intense business of just improving their leaching technologies. I know this is hyper specific and esoteric, but it's one of those things that I think is going to be a huge catalyst for this company over the next 5 to 10 years. And with the supportive macro environment, a management that seems to know what they're doing, a couple bumper years where debt is basically a fraction of what it was. On a net debt basis, they have about $10 billion, which is about 1 year of EBITDA. That's a very clean balance sheet for a miner. And so you have those kind of three things together, a company that's relatively modestly valued, 17 times current earnings. And I think all of that combined provides that I think over the next maybe 5 to 7 years, there could be a very good opportunity for investors in Freeport-McMoRan.